Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peter Igaga, and I want to welcome you to February, the month of love. The one time when everybody wants to know who loves them and who doesn't. Very easy way to find out about that. We're here at the Kampala Serena Hotel talking about Mr. Right or Mr. Right Now. Now, that is a question that you need to ask yourselves. Are you looking for Mr. Right or Mr. Right Now? Julius, as I mentioned earlier, the one and only, the only Jaluo.
He's Mr. Doctor.
Yes, it's just like Dr. Chameleon. He is Dr. Love.
Dr. Love?
Yes.
God's gift to women.
Why is he calling himself Dr. Love?
Because he believes if you've got a love problem, he can fix it.
You go to him. So tell us the description. What medicine do you use to cure those heartbroken?
Stefan, before you get us to talk about your herbs and spices that you use to cure, my question is there a formula for falling in love?
A formula for falling in love?
Yeah.
I don't think there's a formula for falling in love. You meet someone, you're attracted to the person, maybe they meet your criteria of what you admire in someone and you fall in love. I don't think there's a formula in falling in love.
But then, and there are certain things that you need to do. And I'll tell you where this is coming from. I mean, tonight we're talking about the difference between Mr. Right and Mr. Right Now. Now, some people have said that those are two different people who serve two different purposes. Okay, but you have to fall in love at some point. Okay, and isn't there supposed to be a sequence? Well, unfortunately, Chris is not here. He'll tell you that there's a sequence. You date, you get to know each other, then you fall in love. But is that reality, or is that just one of Chris's theories?
You know, you can meet someone today and out of what they say, out of what they look like, fall in love. But I come from the school of thought that there's nothing like Mr. Right, especially in the 21st century. It's always Mr. Right Now.
Oh my God!
who can provide this right now? There's nothing like Mr. Right. Mr. Right Now is someone who's accomplished, someone who's up to date, someone who's able to meet what you want. I don't think there's anything like.
So how do you determine Mr. Right Now?
Mr. Right Now? Mr. Right Now is someone who can meet your demands right now.
Is it about demands? Anyway.
But you remember before we went on, we had that chat about monogamy and polygamy. Now, if I stand to be correct, you are actually advocating for polyandry. Because you're telling women, have very many men. So as long as what you have right now can be sorted, then that's the way.
Yeah, and I've said it in a different forum. I find it weird when women commit themselves for long-term relationships at very young ages. You're 22, you're in campus, you commit yourself to another individual who's also the same level with you. You apparently that's your Mr. Right. You commit that I will love you, we'll one day get married. Then you finish campus, 10 years later, the guy is not at the same level with you. But there's the Mr. Right Now. There's a guy who has done his TAO, pays his dues. That's the Mr. Right. There's nothing like Mr. Right. It's always Mr. Right Now. It never works.
Julius.
This is a fallacy that you want to live by.
If I may ask him, if this show was meant to advise your own daughter, what would you tell him?
I'll tell her the same thing. Don't commit yourself at a very young age. There is a time where you'll meet the right person to marry you. You know, we waste a lot of time.
Now, I don't know which country is my brother coming from, but I'm scared. I'm really scared. Because if you could sit here and advocate for Mr. Right now, let me disappoint you. The reason why we have the highest number of broken marriages is because of looking for Mr. Right now. The demands that he was talking about. If you could have elaborated more about the demands that we are talking about, these are cheap things, phone, cheap chicken here in the hotel and whatever. But me, I believe in a soft and steady relationship, which is practiced by Mr. Right. Mr. Right does not panic. What he proposes, he will put it in order. But when you talk of Mr. Right now, you know, if you want to see how crazy the world is and the Mr. Rights now they are talking about, you tell that man that let we go and see our parents. You will not see him next day. So I don't know whether he's telling us that the generation of the 21st, you know, you always talk about 21st generation, 21st, but you need to sit down and do more research about the 21st generation you guys are talking about. I remember one time on this very show we talked about matchmaking, matchmaking.
Yeah.
Now, do you know why our fathers and grandfathers were Mr. Right? They knew what they wanted.
Right from the get-go.
Right from the day one.
Yeah.
But when you see that you said things that I did not understand. One, you did not commit. You don't need to commit yourself in a longer relationship or something. I wonder, are you married yourself?
Don't grill the man. Why are you asking me?
No, I really wanted to know whether he was Mr. Right.
It depends.
Or he was Mr. Right again.
He answers that question.
Depending on the weather. This weather will not answer that question.
Banji, Mr. Right now.
Now, I will take our viewers back to the first question you asked. Is there a formula for falling in love? Love doctors like Jalo here have tried to really do research and see whether there is a formula for falling in love. But you know, love is a psychological feeling. It's an emotion. It's an emotion. Now, there are people who you could be walking on the street and you see someone, if you're a man and you see a woman and you are like, you just feel those, you know, shocks, waves in your body, and you say, this is the one. And if you approach them, you may find that things will work out, might work out. It might happen to you, it might never happen. There is the steady progress, and I'm not being political here. There is the steady progress, the one you talked about, where or the one Chris normally advocates, where you meet someone and slowly by slowly you build something, and then you begin from being, meeting, then you become familiar with each other, then you start missing each other, then that one you may never know when you fell in love, but you also fall in love. So there is no specific formula, but it's about your emotional feeling, attachment, and how you feel safe with the other one, the other person.
But then, aren't you there just treading on the fence between these two gentlemen?
Yes, that's why I said I'm beginning there. Now, when we talk about Mr. Right and Mr. Right now, I think there is a challenge. And I want to pick from what Julia said. Because if you want Mr. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, especially the ladies who are viewing, Mr. Right now simply wants to get into your skirts.
Not really.
Seriously, Mr. Right now
Yes.
is a hungry, thirsty being.
Absolutely.
He just wants to get into your skirts.
I remember on the same show I mentioned about kangaroo love.
Yes, that one.
Now those are the Mr. Right now.
That is the Mr. Right now. Because Mr. Right now has no emotional attachment with you, really. He just, and you see, one way to know Mr. Right now is the way he compliments about you. He will say, you have nice legs, you have a nice smile. Mr. Right will look into your soul and say, when you say words, you make me feel good. You know?
Banji, just before you go there, when you meet somebody, isn't it visual first? then you get to know them, then you start appreciating them. Because if Mr. Right is going to start in Stefan's defense, start telling you what a great soul you have, and doesn't know you, isn't he a liar?
Now, it's like this. Me as a man, if I meet with a woman, me, I will know in the next 3 seconds that I will push further with this woman, or it's a dead game. Just the interaction itself. How do you receive me? How, you know, that kind of interaction. So Dr. Love, Dr. Fastway. So even if you've just met a person now, you know, maybe you have met at a party or you've met at church. You know, when you meet at church, for example, if Chris was here and would tell you if you meet at church, this person would start by asking you, what service do you attend? Now that they are trying to see whether their program can fit in yours. Mr. Right now will be asking, where are you going after here? Can we go and do ABCD? You understand? He wants immediate results. He's not wasting his time.
Okay.
I need you to say something. I think we have wrong definitions of what Mr. Right, Mr. Right now is, and what Mr. Right is. Mr. Right is what women refer to as soulmate. I want to spend the rest of my life with this individual.
That is
you
Mr.
love it.
Mr.
Right. You know,
Yes, you are correct. Yeah, you are correct.
You know, you grow up together, you have these fantasies. He tells you that one day I'll build for you a house somewhere. And then Mr. Right now. And that's why when you look at so many marriages, there's always that age difference. There's a very big age difference. Because women, it's very unfair. It's very unfair for women because women have biological clocks. You will try and chase that money, but it will reach a point where she needs a Mr. Right. That's why Mr. Right is Mr. Right now. There's nothing like Mr. Right. Love fades. Love is so overrated. Actually, no, it's the truth. Marriage in recent years.
Are you trying to tell ladies that are viewing this show that they should get now? That is now, and now.
Listen, if you're ready, if you are ready to get married to someone who will provide your needs.
If your right kind of, future wife approached you, she's ready, you're going to tell her no because you're still in the process. You're not yet there for her.
Yeah, definitely. When you take a conscious decision to do certain things, it's always good to know where you stand. So I wouldn't walk into marriage simply because a girl is available or there's a lady that's so much interested in me. I think sometimes it goes beyond really knowing who you are. You must be able to draw time to see if you're compatible with someone's, values, someone's decisions, and someone's behavior. So for me, what makes me Mr. Right is if I can learn your ways, if I can learn your behavior, and then I can put up with some of your weaknesses so that we can support each other. I think that is what makes me Mr. Right. But what doesn't make me Mr. Right is because I have the money and we're ready to go to introduce and do a wedding. That doesn't make me Mr. Right.
You meet a person in a taxi and you
marry someone on the basis that they tell you they love you. It's nonsense.
You meet a person in the taxi and you go home.
No. Look.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Just one minute.
Just a minute. You can meet Mr. Right and you meet him now. Mr. Right that you meet now is different from Mr. Right now.
Now, I was just about to ask a question. I rarely do agree with Stefan, but is there a possibility that what he is saying is there is a time and a place for both? As in, for example, women are very emotional, okay? This lady maybe has divorced or broken up with her boyfriend, and she needs comfort, not necessarily sex or money or anything like that. She just needs that emotional support, somebody to walk with her. And we've seen it happen. And in some cases, Mr. Right now can develop into Mr. Right. Because later she realizes this was a friend who was just hanging there in the wings.
Peter,
and then she realizes this is the man she needed all along.
Do you believe that relationship is a research? That's why you have doctors, that's why you have counselors, that's why you have churches. If you are telling me that we should pray a pick and pray, what he's telling us, pick and pray.
But
the matter to game. speak, and it has worked.
It
for
has
you.
worked. It has
And
worked before.
Let me tell you. I am 43 years of age. When I grew up with my grandfather. In the history that he used to tell us as a Gombora chief and whatever, there was no case he has ever handled of a woman who has hanged himself or poisoned himself because of heart broken. But look at what is happening today.
Yeah.
The rate that the cases are being handled of suicide because so and so has broken my heart, so and so has done this. It's the highest rate. Do you know why? Because of the Mr. Right now we are talking about. If you do not do research about any relationship, even those the ones they are calling Mr. Right now, they need research. Who is he? You will sleep with a ghost. I remember they used to tell us that when you go to Mombasa and you don't trust the person, you will the ghost in the bed. So what he told you, the only mission of Mr. Right now, let me just be broad as a legal person, is to know who you are, how you've been created, how ladies basically, and ladies are a victim of this. The one we are calling Mr. Right now, is just to know who you are, and the business ends there. Mm-hmm. By the way, you don't even it doesn't. Let me tell you, the funniest part of the Mr. Right, you may even be easier to know his his sexual not orientation. His best sexual fantasies. No, I don't want to use the word fantasies. I would want to symbolize the best word that viewers can understand. His sexual style. Before you know his next name.
Okay, now we do need to go into a break. What? Yes, I said. Now we are here at Kampala Serena Hotel talking about the difference between Mr. Right and Mr. Right now. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after the break.
Yeah, describe your Mr. Right.
First of all, Mr. Right has to be my friend, like best friend. We have to understand each other. You know me, you know my characters, you know my behaviors, and you can stand them because no one is perfect. So all my imperfections, you can stand them, you can endure. We can live together. That's Mr. Right to me.
What happened to, love at first sight? Let's say you meet me today and you're like, wow, let's get married tomorrow. That sort of thing doesn't exist in your life?
No, it doesn't.
Personally, I think Mr. Right is someone that is ready to take up the mantle for the decisions that I've made in life. Me, as Fred, I would not say I'm Mr. right now because I'm still in the process. If you're going to be with someone's daughter, you really need to work on those challenges that you have, you as an individual. And for me, being right, Mr. Right indicates that you really understand who you are. Personal awareness, self-awareness is very, very key in this game. So if you know you have some challenges in life, you need to seek out help. You need to really work on them so that you really become that person you want to be. And then also, secondly, I really don't think Mr. Right stands for perfection. So in my view, if I ever wake up one day and I want to walk down the aisle with someone's daughter, I would think at that point I would be Mr. Right.
Welcome back from the break. We are here at the Kampala Serena Hotel talking about the difference between Mr. Right and Mr. Right now. Now, we need to hear from you. Don't forget, this conversation continues on Twitter, on Facebook. Let's engage. Let's talk about it. And let's talk about Mr. Right and Mr. Right now. Now, Julius.
Before you go to Julius, because there's something I might lose. You said there's a time for both Mr. Right and Mr. Right now. And you said there might be a situation where a woman needs,
emotional support.
Yeah. Now, this is advice I want to give to my brothers outside there. When you are dating a woman, ask her if she has gotten from a previous relationship. If you are the first guy for her to hook up with you, you are Mr. Right now. Chances are that you will not move forward. Once you finish, she finishes downloading her emotions on you, you will not be the real guy that she's looking for. Okay? Most likely. I haven't said always. So you have to be aware of that. And if probably you might be the next guy she gets into a relationship with, but you discover from the conversation you have with her that she is emotionally done with the ex, then you are Mr. Right. Now, this issue of Mr. Right now, when you communicate, he behaves like the security organs of the Republic of Uganda. They don't tell you the truth. They can be investigating you, but you don't know that you are being investigated, isn't it? They are secretive. And it is what Julius has been trying to bring forward. Mr. Right now will meet you within 30 minutes. He has told you that for him, he prefers to have his sex by the poolside. You haven't asked him. He's bragging. He's showing you that, he's a master in the other department. He hasn't even asked you, the woman, what do you prefer? He's telling you about himself. He's selfish, Mr. Right now. He's selfish. He's marketing himself. I always tell my, that I teach at university. And I always tell my students that the best salesperson, especially when you go to Wino, they can sell you rotten tomatoes when you are seeing. They say, this is the best tomatoes. Please, this is a heap. These are many. You will eat for a week. When you reach home, 90% are rotten. That is Mr. Right now. Do you know why? Tomorrow you will not go to buy tomatoes from that same one, same person. For them, they were focusing on right now. Let me sell right now. So that is Mr. Right now. Mr. Right will communicate in such a way that you understand them. That is Mr. Right. Okay? Mr. Right might tell you, you know what? I have met you today. I am really have been in a relationship. It is ending. But I am giving it time.
Peter.
So that is Mr. Right. Mr. What? Mr. Right.
Mr. Right,
but Mr. Right now, when you ask them, are you in a relationship? He will say, what are you saying? Now, what has he said?
It's quite unfair that we can sit here as men. We don't have biological clocks. We can decide what to do. No, we don't really. You can wake up one day.
We are helping the generation to come.
I want you to put yourself in a woman's perspective. In a woman's perspective. She's 24, she's 25, 26. She meets this cute guy, soulmate. They lie to each other, tell each other what they'll do. And maybe he has the potential of becoming, what he is. But this lady has a time limit. She has to do things within a certain circumference. Mr. Right is Mr. Right now. Someone who can meet your needs. I'm not advocating for you to go and marry unscrupulous fellas. You can know someone in a few months, in a year.
Banji says 3 seconds.
Actually, research says 6 months.
But Dr. Love, it's called Dr. Love?
Yes,
God's gifts.
Could you face the cameras and tell the viewers, especially ladies out there, the needs you are talking about, the needs.
The needs are very simple. Security. Security.
And you meet Mr. Right now, you talk about security.
Yes, what is security?
Oh my God.
Let me God. Like there's so women's needs. What are they?
Go on. Security.
Security.
Yes.
He can marry you. He can marry you. Can provide for you. Can bear kids with
when you talk of be broad, tell them when you talk of needs. Those
are the needs. Basic needs. I'm talking about the basic needs. Food, shelter.
But question,
security.
And Stefan, I would like to direct this to you. Can we then say that actually sometimes, and I say sometimes, Mr. Right or Mr. Right now are creation of the ladies because of the way they put themselves out there? Because you see, when you feed yourself...
But you see, first approach matters.
Yeah.
Me, when I was still dating, I never believed in this in the characters of we meet out, hotels, whatever. Not me. That's why I believe that then I was Mr. Right. Because me, when I met my pattern, I told her point blank, look, no hotels, chips and chicken. If we need to talk about ourselves, come to my house. I have a kitchen. We will cook.
sit on our dining table and talk about ourselves. We fail from there. No hotels. Let me tell you, by the way, me, I don't believe in courtship. It has a lot of lies. This is the man.
No, and that is what I'm advocating for.
No.
That's what you're telling these young girls to do.
But courtship is important.
You waste time.
Okay, let me just ask a simple question before he comes in. Do you think you are Mr. Right or you're Mr. Right now?
Right now, I am not Mr. Right.
You're Mr.
I am
Right
Mr.
now.
Right now. Let me tell you one thing. Let me ask you
Ladies,
questions. Let me ask you a question. You're married, right? Did you marry your soulmate? Did you marry the person you really wanted to marry when you were kids?
How do you determine that one is your soulmate?
If
you don't have time to study who is the person. Let me assume you have a girlfriend. Did you ask?
Me, I don't. I have.
You have a wife.
You see,
very
you
good.
See, you see, guys.
Very good.
You see, guys.
Did you ask her hobbies? What does she like? What does she dislike? And all that.
You see, Julius and Jalo, the whole thing is there are many ladies viewing us now who are really confused. They want to know whether Igaga here is Mr. Right and Mr. Bunch is Mr. Right now. Now, the discussion of Mr. Right and Mr. Right now, for me, what I would tell the ladies is, what you mentioned it, can we be in this journey today, tomorrow, and the day
forever.
after?
Together.
That is the
With
question
these
we are discussing.
circumstances, A, B, C.
A, B, C,
Hey.
D.
But you know it's a lie, right?
Jalo, just
You
a
know
minute.
it's a lie.
Just a minute. He said, for him, he said, when he met his madam, he said, no hotels. We will discuss openly. Now, Mr. Right is the type of person who really discusses with you his future. He could be a student, you meet, and the guy is telling you we are in second year. After second year, when we finish university, I will move out of daddy's house. I have saved some little pocket money. I am going to rent. It might be a house of 20,000. I know they are somewhere in Kampala here. And then after that, I will work for 2 years. After 2 years, I think I will think of settling down. And I'm also planning to have 4 or 5 children. That is Mr. Right. He's giving you
Direction,
a path,
okay.
direction,
A plan.
and he's asking you, can you fit in my investment plan?
Can I define
Are
Mr.
you
Okay.
able to
Okay, he
move
defined
with
Mr.
me?
Right. Let me define Mr. Right now.
I am still
Just
defining
wait,
my
just
Mr.
wait,
Right.
just wait.
Let me define
Just a
Mr. Right.
minute.
Just a minute. Mr. Right now is show and proof. I tell you, I will do this and I will do that. It's not that I will do this for you in the future. You are ready and I'm ready.
Is it possible to have to merge the
That's
two?
Mr.
So
Right
you have
now.
a Mr. Right who's a Mr. Right now.
Most women live in the bubble of Mr. Right and they end up being very
Let me tell you one
miserable.
thing, Igag. Mr. Right cannot be Mr. Right now. And I want to emphasize this. Mr. Right is like Chiprotich, marathon, long distance. You will run with him 42 kilometers. That is Mr. Right. He's showing you the future. He's showing you that he's here, he's committed. He doesn't want to play around. Mr. Right now is a gambler. He's in a casino now. He's playing his chips.
But Banji, there are some women who have, and we hear about bad boys. I gather Mr. Right now is a bad boy.
He kind of a bad boy, yes.
Yes.
Mr. Right now is not a
But
bad
aren't
boy.
there some bad boys who have gotten their wings clipped, and a lady says, "This one I'm going to get him," and she gets him.
And that's the mistake most ladies do. Why do you want to clip the man's wings? Why? If you remove feathers from a bird, does it fly? No, it can't fly. Because what defines, just a minute, what defines this man is being bad. That's who he is.
Okay.
So you may think you've clipped his wings. You know, there is a saying, I think it is in one of Chinua Achebe's book, that when the hunters learned to shoot without missing,
The birds.
without patching, but I add another one, the shooter learned to shoot mid-air. So whether the bird was flying or patching, he would still shoot it and it would die. That is the bad boy. You think you've clipped him, he comes home at 8 o'clock, you think now he no longer. But what does he do when he leaves 8 a.m. in the morning? Between 8 a.m. and 8 o'clock. So Mr. Right is the kind of man, even if you call his phone and he doesn't pick, you, the woman, you be confident that where he is, he's doing the right
Either
thing.
he's not with his phone.
Yes.
And he talked of something security. But let me tell you, Mr. Right now cannot build any confidence in a lady. What you call about security.
Yes.
Never at one point in life that you will be secure. Let me tell you, whether Mr. Right or Mr. Right now, they are all aiming at a relationship. But in today's generation, that these
millennials,
young boys talk about the 21st generation, let me tell you, 100 out of 100%, you'll find 70% of any relationship that you are trying to enter. There is either a child who is not yours or who is not mine. Either the girl was disappointed before or the man was disappointed, but he's a single father, he's a single mother. Now, that's what I told you earlier when I was saying that relationship is a research thing. You need to research. Mr. Right now will not have no time to ask, do you have a child? He has no that time, but he's aiming at a relationship. I don't even think that he's aiming at a relationship. But their character is hit and run. They hit, they take off. You will not see him. I have told him, I have a friend of mine, whom I cannot mention his name. I think he's that a character. He's the character of Mr. Right now.
Yeah.
He was telling me, I told him, but colleague, why don't you settle down? He told me, no. Once, one of his worries was the caveira every evening, going back home. Two, he told me that he finds it so easy. When he meets a person in the street, they go where they go, no business. It stops there and it ends there. No business. You don't know my address, you don't know where I stay, you don't know my contact. We've met, we've talked about what we've talked. I have given you what you have asked me, and I have done what I want. What I wanted to do, and the business ends there. I don't know whether my friend, Mr. Doctor or Mr. Love, it's what he's advocating for.
No.
The generation he's talking about. Listen, the generation that he's talking about. Some of us, when we sit in front of cameras, we are leaders. We need to speak to the generations to come. We need to sort of, let me tell you, marriage is a nation. You can't build a nation without married people. But when you start telling us that it's about the business, it's about whatever, I don't understand.
No.
Marriage, let me tell you, I asked you that if his show was meant to talk to
young
advise,
ladies.
not to advise your own daughter, your own daughter, would you tell her to move with Mr. Right now?
Mr.
Whom
Right-
you don't know, let me say, whom you don't know where he comes from. There was a recent something on social media which was running. A lady took off out of the church. She ran from the church after she discovered at the altar that the man lied her that he was working with oil company or something. The lady was from Barara. I know the lady. She was from Barara. She took off. That's what we are calling Mr. Right.
No, I'm
She
not
met.
talking-
No, no.
I'm
She
not-
met. She met.
I am not
She
talking
met
about
him.
such individuals.
She met him. They went into
And that's why I
plans.
say-
They went into plans without digging. I'm writing a book. I'm writing a book. Before and after marriage, it covers all this you are talking about.
And
People-
you see, Igor, no.
I just think we have
one thing
different
because it's an
definitions.
onslaught on him.
Peter, one thing
No,
I want to
I
talk about this
I
book.
want-
One thing I want to talk about this book. People marry hearts. The rest that he's talking about, security, these needs and whatever, follow.
All right, I'll tell you what, and I want to, it's good you've gone, you've talked about that. There's something that Stefan mentioned, that love fades. Which is the reality? All right, I mean, when you've just met somebody or publicly
It
you're in
fed
love.
when it didn't take time to study it.
No.
Love is patient. Love is it was all. It's kind.
That's in
It's
the Old
everything.
Testament.
No, it's not in the Old
Let me
Testament.
tell you, that's the Old Testament.
people
Let us
want-
be real. You're attacking me here.
People,
But
no.
in reality-
Igor,
One second, let's
people
and
who
then
say,
we come
people
back
who
to
say
you.
love fades.
Yeah.
Just imagine, you know, in Uganda, we like using agriculture and we pray that please God give us rain. We don't irrigate. So when God hides his rain, he takes it to Mombasa, we suffer here with famine. Love is like a plant in your, you know, you have a house plant. You have to water that plant. That is love. Continued renewal. You must continually renew your love. You
But
must,
he's Mr. Right now. He has all that time.
now, this
No,
our gentleman
Mr. Right
here
now
He's
is
is
a
not
guy who
patient
was.
to irrigate that.
He's
just a minute, Jaru. You are confusing Mr. Right, who appears at this moment, with Mr. Right now. Because, let me give you for instance, ladies out there, you can meet a gentleman today, and he tells you, and I'm going to use the example of a church. He tells you, I'm going to church. Can we go? He finds you on the way, and he gives you a lift to church. And when you enter the church, he tells you, say, by the way, my mom is here, or my brother is here. They will normally sit in this corner. And he takes you to the corner. And the corner he sits, there's his father, his mother, his friend.
Day one.
Yeah, he has nothing with you, but he has already brought you into the circle of his family. That is Mr. Right. And if after the church, if you're a wise lady, you will ask him, by the way, tell him, are you married? Because that's a potential Mr. Right. A Mr. Right, even if it is in 30 minutes or 2 months, he will struggle to introduce you to the people who matter in his life. His friends, his parents, his workmates.
I think they really misunderstand what I'm trying to say. Mr. Right now is someone who has his life in check right now.
In check how?
In check. You know, like most, and I said it before, most young women commit to individuals. You tell this guy that you stick with this guy, and because you love each other, you end up wasting each other's time for a very long time. And that's why I say that.
But can you say most? Based on which statistics? I'll just like to know.
And that's why I asked you early on. Are you married to your soulmate? Are you married to the woman you told her that you're going to marry her years before?
No, let me tell you, I've met Peter with his wife. If there is a couple I would admire, it is them. If you see the way they associate, no, listen, no. Peter, his boyfriend, is a person I have known for some time. If you see the way they associate, the way they talk to each other, the way they sit close, the way they, I'm telling you, I pray I meet them with their children. You see that really they know themselves, they love each other. Let me just give you an example. Mr. Right now is like these tubes. You see this tube? This it's called what? European tube something.
Fluorescent
tube. The moment you switch it on, it will light.
Yeah.
Okay? But you switch it off. In the next 20 seconds, it will be cold. That is Mr. Right now.
Those are scrupulous fellas.
Mr. Right,
Mr. Right now.
The Mr. Right we talk about is like a hot plate. Go and switch on a hot plate. It will start slowly. Once it catches fire, even if you switch it off, you will cook.
What happens when you catch fire before it catches fire?
Impossible. You
are the woman. I'm talking about listen, it's very easy for us to sit down here and talk on a man's perspective. We are trying to advise ladies out there.
My brother, let's help the generation to come. We will be
there.
They know probably he's tired. Probably he's tired.
Listen,
maybe I'm tired, or maybe I'm contented. Let me help the generation to come.
Let me give you facts now. I sit on a show on a daily basis where I deal with issues like this, and most of the issues I deal with are people who have been in long-term relationships.
Which show?
I work for San UFM.
We need to investigate that show. Which show?
It is the truth. And statistics, research. Most of the issues, and I talk to so many, and women are the ones that usually send these issues. Most of the issues, they met this guy in campus. The guy still stays at his father's crib in Bugolobisa, a big mansion. The lady wants to move on with her life. The guy is still stuck in that bubble that, I love this woman, one day will be the life. Mr. Right comes. Mr. Right comes. He is successful. Mr. Right now. Mr. Right now is what I call Mr. Right. He has his life in check. Do you advise that lady
so for you, don't see the difference?
There's a difference. There's a big difference. But your Mr. Right now is an unscrupulous fellow. Mr. Right now cannot. It's not necessarily an unscrupulous guy.
I'll tell you what. One of the things I strongly believe is ladies, especially all you ladies out there, should stay away from being desperate.
Exactly.
Yes. You see, the problem with my thinking is the problem with Mr. Right now is he's providing a solution right now. So you've been talking about a biological clock. So it's as if ladies, it reaches a certain point, whatever comes
and
my
they
way.
say it can't. It's done. It's done.
Yes, which is a dangerous place to be, and I'll tell you why. there's a risk of ending up with a person that you are not even compatible with. However, I think that Mr. Right and Mr. Right Now serve two different purposes and actually can be in one person, so that they end up serving serve your needs right now. And I don't believe Mr. Right Now has to be sexual, not really, but can be, I mentioned emotionally, support emotionally. Manji, you said that if you're coming out of a relationship and this guy comes along, you feel sorry for the guy, because the moment the lady is steady, she's going to.
In fact, there is a theory I normally tell people. Sometimes, as a man, if you want to win over the woman, you play weak link. You know, you shed crocodile tears. You see, this lady, I educated her from campus. She has broken my heart. If I just a minute, then the other lady will feel sorry for you. Then she falls in your trap. That is Mr. Right now.
But if I now pose the question,
Mr. Right will talk about his past relationships with
confidence,
but also with respect. You understand? Yeah. He will be respecting, because remember, you are telling a lady, he's telling you a lady about another lady. If he tells you in a wrong way, it means he will tell another woman the same things. I was about to say, it's a very so he has to tell you about his past in a respectful way. You understand? In a way that respects you, who he has met, that respects himself, but also respects the past. Yeah. You understand? And this talk should be, I have moved. Okay. Or I am moving.
All right, we do need to go into a break. We're here at the Kampala Serena Hotel by the poolside, talking about Mr. Right and Mr. Right Now. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back from the break. In case you've joined us, you are right in time for the last segment of this show, where we are talking about the difference between Mr. Right and Mr. Right Now. Now, a lot has been said. We want to hear from you. Go to our Facebook page, like it, talk to us on Twitter. We have our individual handles right there on your screen. And maybe Stefan will stop choking. Now, I know, Stefan, it has been a tough one for you.
They came for me today.
But of course, there is a bit of a concern. Now, you've talked about the biological clock of women, and
whether we like it or not, it's very important.
I don't actually agree, and I'll tell you why. Because what happens is, it's as if there are certain things you have to do by certain times, or if not, there's a problem with you, which is not the case.
We've seen lady get married at 40.
Yes.
At 45.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's no rush.
It doesn't apply when he talks about biological.
That's why I say it.
And you see,
I said it's very wrong for us to just sit here as men with men's mindset. Because you're saying that you implied that you can get married at 40. We know the implications, birth implications. You know, like
you've not had people giving birth at 60.
But you know, there's scientific evidence that, you know, there are certain traits you get from kids who are born at that time. This is the truth. And then you're also talking in this sense, and you're refuting that there's religion. You have to get married to procreate, right?
Yeah, you see, Jalo, so what you are saying, the biological clock, yes, it is true.
Whether you like it or not.
But you see, let me ask the ladies out there this question. Your biological clock, especially the one of being able to produce children, started when you were around 14, 13. Then the government of the Republic of Uganda said, no, you can hold on until you are 18. So from 18 to 35, what were you doing? Didn't you meet men? You met Mr. Right, but they met Mr. Right, but they were looking for Mr. Right Now. So they missed him. That's why me and him, we are telling them the telltale signs. Don't miss Mr. Right. This Mr. Right man is always, the way he conducts his business, he's steady, you know. And most cases, because he's steady, and ladies are, and you know, Jaloya has been talking about the one who meets the ladies' needs. In fact, probably he's talking about material needs. Now, when you're a lady and you focus on material needs, you may miss Mr. Right.
What do you want them to focus on?
No, why
Emotional
are
needs.
why are you focusing on only material needs?
But you see, they
Go
don't, they
beyond
don't
the
trust-
material needs.
Yes,
Let me
they-
tell you,
they-
there is
that's
and I've said it before on this show. There's a professor at campus who told us one thing. If you have friends, you know, when you're in campus, they tell you that, you know, after campus, you know, I will build this, I'll build some slums somewhere. Run away from such people. That is what you're talking about.
No, that isn't what I'm talking. Because, Jalo, when you left campus, probably you didn't have a bicycle like me. I left campus with only my mattress and a few clothes. I was just a very humble man. But where I am now, the position in which I am, there are very many ladies who we crossed paths during that time. They meet me and say, oh, Mr. Banchi, well, we missed the opportunity. Because now, my friend, I am an established professor. You understand? But then they wanted probably me to be going to take them out while driving. But I didn't have money to buy a car. But I had a projectile of a future together with them. So yeah, sometimes the ladies run down their biological clock chasing Mr. Right now, and they miss Mr. Right.
So that's what I'm saying. So is there a chance that the ladies are a victim of their own undoing?
Sometimes the men, the Mr. Right now are very.
You see, when Mr. Right now comes across to a woman, he promises you heaven and earth. At times, women's brain, they are overshadowed by their promises. And you see, the heart of a woman melts like sugar in water. Then you find at the end of the day, she's driven into a mistake. Why that's why in most cases, it's women who run from there, not men running from there. She's driven there. She was not prepared to meet the needs of the Mr. Right now. Like I said, I will still insist that Mr. Right, based on research, he takes his time. His demands are genuine. Are genuine. When you meet Mr. Right, you will see that you will just look into his eyes and you will tell his genuinity. But Mr. Right now is like these fake products on the market.
Good on the outside.
You will just look at him and you see him shining and you say, this is it.
Because Igaga, just wait a minute. If a lady goes with a man on a date, and you're out there for 3 hours, and 2.5 of those 3 hours, the man is just talking about himself. He has no interest in knowing you, the woman. Who are you? And I think Julius has said this. Because Mr. Right, you know, as he said, the art of dating, it is research. So Mr. Right is trying to look at this woman X and saying, what does woman X have that I can take, I can buy?
They even normally follow your previous stories. If you tell him that, look, I've been with somebody, but he disappointed me, Mr. Right will take his notes and go, why did he leave the other man? What is the difference between that man and me? You know, they take time.
No,
they take time.
As these two individuals argue on the basis of emotions. Let me say this, whether you like it or not, the pressures that you go through as men, as a man, is very different from the pressures women go through. There's societal pressure, there's religious pressure, and what you're still refuting, biological clock. Whether you like it or not, they'll reach a point where she needs a man that can stand this whole nonsense of this is the right guy, I will look into his eyes and he is melting. It's nonsense.
But you see, you cheated my question. Because if you had answered my question, the needs of a woman you are talking about, if it's not an iPhone,
no,
a fancy
the
hotel,
woman is not
good
iPhone.
dress, a car, listen, a car, what
Saloon every
trips,
evening.
Saloon,
listen, stop,
no, painting their nails in the expensive whatever. If those are the needs you are talking about, you are misleading the generation.
I'm not talking about those needs.
What
I'm
are
talking
the
about
needs?
basic needs.
What are basic needs?
Which one?
Which ones? Tell us.
Because Jalo, first wait.
Security. You guys went to school, right?
No, Jalo, first wait.
Food.
I know those are basic needs.
basic
But
needs.
now let me ask the ladies there a question. I have just met you today. I have taken you out. Oh, I have given you my telephone number. What business are you doing? Sending me a shopping list. Am I your father?
Yeah, thank
Am I your brother? Why are you sending me a shopping list?
Yeah.
No, first wait. Let me tell the ladies out there. We have just met. We have gone on a date twice. Then you start telling me how you are graduating. Your graduation gown is for 500,000. The party will be in Serena. Am I your father?
But you see the
So
impression,
now,
the impression you trade.
now, and now,
The
wait,
impression
wait.
you trade.
Yes, that's
You're
what
Mr.
I'm
Right
trying
now.
to develop. If I'm Mr. Right now, I will write that check. But after that party, I will drive to room 166 in Serena Hotel. That's where we shall end. But if I'm a genuine man, I will tell you, say, you know what? I am a secondary school teacher at such and such a school. My sir, I can afford to give you a budget of 500,000. Can you work within that? Now, that is Mr. Right. Then these ladies say he's mean, he is broke, but they are missing Mr. Right.
But
You
guys,
understand?
but guys, may you agree with me that we are in a generation where men, young men and young girls are desperate?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's a lot of desperation. There is,
Okay.
there's.
Now you may tell the point why we are urging.
Okay.
And then
No,
because-
okay, we've reached that point where we do actually have to wrap up the show. So it's time for parting shots, and I will give you the honors because Banji needs to catch his breath.
I don't know. I don't know what else. You know, there is this assumption from Professor
and Julius.
and Julius that I'm advocating for people to get into relationships with unscrupulous fellas. Mr. Right can be Mr. Right now. Don't fall into a trap where, and I've seen it different forums. Don't put yourself in a fix. Date, but don't put yourself in a fix that this is the man I'm going to end up with. You know, whether you like it or not, we all have time limits, and women are different. You will be at a certain level, and the person is not at the same level with you. Marry Mr. Right now. Mr. Right now is self-accomplished, and don't date the guy. Get to know him. Get to know this individual. Mr. Right can be Mr. Right now.
Okay.
So,
Julius, your parting shots.
Ladies, Mr. Right now is never a product you can go for. I disagree with my brother here. Mr. Right now remains Mr. Right, and Mr. Right remains Mr. Right. The characters of Mr. Right are very clear, and the characters of Mr. Right now are very clear. If you want to cry for the rest of your life, go for his Mr. Right now.
Enough said.
Oh, okay. Well, now, Mr. Right now is normally the wrong guy. Mr. Right now is very secretive. Mr. Right now doesn't include you in his plans. Mr. Right now, if he wants to take you out, he will call you at that moment. He can't make a long-term program because he's not sure whether you fit in it. He will just call you and say, are you busy? Can we go out? Now, when you say no, he will call you after. Mr. Right will check on you, you know, how your day went. That's Mr. Right. Mr. Right is a very patient man. Mr. Right listens. Mr. Right is a researcher. He studies you. Mr. Right, you know, the most important thing is about, you know, sometimes I've listened to ladies and they tell you, you know, my heart is telling me not to continue with this guy. If your heart is telling you not to continue, why are you still there? That's the wrong
Because
guy.
it's Mr. Right.
Run away, please. Remove your high heels and take off. That is Mr. Right now. He's a wrong man.
Yeah.
So, if your heart feels that this is it, you know, let me share with the viewers a story of my grandmother. She said in her life, there was no single time she thought of divorcing my grandfather. They are from a different generation. Because she always felt confident, she always felt secure. So if you feel that,
Until their marriage was based on matchmaking and based on research.
Yeah.
so if you feel like that with a gentleman, then he's Mr. Right. But if you have doubts, you are dealing with Mr. Right now.
Wow, so you've heard it from the men. We've been talking about the difference between Mr. Right and Mr. Right now. Mine is very simple. short-term gains only produce long-term losses. And long-term gains produce,
Long-term gains.
yes, that's the way it is. Now, before we actually exit, I have one question. We've been talking about Mr. Right and Mr. Wrong. Is there Miss Right now and Miss Right?
Yes, when you meet Miss Right, she will toss you up and down. She will never give you an answer until she does research on you. If you are not a patient man, you are not also Mr. Right to be patient, as you said. You run away.
But Miss Right now, the ones those are the
But
ones
the Miss
that
Right now,
the ones that he likes.
the one
They came, I don't have any.
Miss Right,
That's
Miss
another
Right
show.
will take you for who you are, takes your package.
immediately she will look at the car you are driving, the watch you are putting on, the shoe you are putting on, and
End
there
of
you are,
story.
you are done.
Well, that will be another discussion. Now, we are here at the Kampala Serena Hotel at the poolside, and we have been talking about the difference between Mr. Right and Mr. Right now. Have a good night, God bless, and we will see you next week for Valentine's.